did put it up in the stored position during use, and well, I bent it. That space looked like this space, somewhat manicured, and maybe some nice landscape lighting. So right now we're gonna go get the excavator and start working on this. Well, that was the plan, to pull the excavator out. It is exactly 1 week from when I shot the first part of this video. I kind of ran out of time last week, had to get to an appointment. Next thing you know, a full week has elapsed, and here we are. So that is the plan today, is to get the excavator out and use that on that hillside. But before I do that, I want to use the tractor one more time down there. I just went and walked that hillside, and there is a spot where I can get 1 to maybe 2 passes. If I drive straight up the hill with the tractor and the flail mower, I should be able to knock down a good portion of those weeds in that thick undergrowth. And it is pretty thick undergrowth. It is quite mature vines and just a bunch of nasty weeds you want to get out of there. So we're going to try that first, see how successful I am with that. And then once we determine when I'm done with the tractor and the flail mower, then we'll pull the E26 out and use that to kind of rake the hillside and clean up around the tree and call this project another one in the books. Yep. That'll do it. All right, update. Two problems we ran into so far. One is I hit some concrete with the flail mower, but that easily turned it off, discharged it. Down over here now, trying to back up and clear this, and I knew there was a tarp in here years ago. And I found it. Here's part of it. And the other hunk of that is now tied up in the back of the flail mower. So look at that mess. Alright, as you can see, it's all tied up in there. I should be able to unravel it all, but that's a big old mess. But overall, this thing is doing great. This hillside is a little mushy. It rained a lot last night, and it's a little off even, so we gotta be careful. But I think I'm almost done with the flail mower. Just gotta get that tarp out of there. I knew there was one in there, but I just didn't know where it was, and I found it. we're done like that. What a successful day, and got a ton accomplished here. I could not be happier. E26 and the 3025E both worked amazingly well. No issues at all with them. But look at the space behind me here. It looks so much better. All those weeds, vines, and just that invasive vegetation is all gone. It is ready for a final grade and hopefully some seed in the fall. But I'm gonna say this is done, check it off the list and move on to the next. The tree looks fantastic behind me. Coming up and down the driveway so far, it looks great with that tree accentuated and this hillside completely cleaned off. So a little bit more work to do, but not today, not for a couple weeks, if not a couple months, until we can seed this. So overall, very successful. We learned 2 things today with the tractor. Nothing was broken in the flail mower, nothing was broken, but we learned a couple things. It doesn't like big chunks of concrete. One big chunk got sucked up into the flail mower. Easy to remove, didn't damage anything. And doesn't like old dirty tarps. It was an old dirty tarp here that I knew was here somewhere, and I found it. That got ripped up and sucked up into that rotating drum as well. Again, not super hard to clear, but just keep that in mind, use it in the future. Make sure to know what lies beneath the thick vegetation. But overall, very happy, nothing broken, and on to the next project. So that's it for today, everybody. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care, everybody.